Welcome. I'm Jeremiah Reiner, and this is the Deeply Rooted Podcast. Hey there, welcome to the Deeply Rooted Podcast. Thank you guys for joining us wherever you're at, however you may be listening. We appreciate you tuning in. Don't forget, head on over to our website, deeplyrootedconference.org. You'll find all of our blog posts, archived episodes that'll take you directly to our YouTube channel. You can also subscribe on Apple Podcasts. We'd appreciate it if you do that. Leave us a review, hit that like button, and share that with other people. That's the best way to get the word out there. And so if you want more information, you can email us. That's drigw18@gmail.com. Again, drigw18@gmail.com. We're going to go ahead and dive right into topic and interview here tonight as we're recording. So not a whole lot of major announcements. I'm pleased to have first-time guest on here, a good friend of mine, former student. So I'm officially 100 years old now by interviewing him on here. But Mr. Daniel England. Daniel, thanks for coming on, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here.
Daniel is a native of Wise County, Virginia. He's a graduate of UVA Wise, so that makes us both alumni there. He completed his physical therapy studies at ETSU there in Johnson City. He and his wife, Sophie, are currently residing right now in Kingsport, Tennessee, and have for the last few years. Daniel's a certified physical therapist, and he also does a little training and coaching on the side for individuals as well. So, how much have you bench pressed in your lifetime? What's the highest you've ever bench pressed?
Back in my college football days, when I was a lot bigger than I am right now, I think I barely crossed over the 300 mark.
Okay.
That was about 60 pounds ago, though, and a lot of little Debbies ago.
Were you more of a squatter or a bench press guy?
You know, I really wasn't ever great at any of the lifts in the weight room, honestly. I don't know if that was just a genetic thing or just where I'm a little bit of a taller guy and have longer limbs.
Right.
So I never really put up any very impressive numbers. I would probably say more of the lower body movements, though, compared to the upper body.
What's the most impressive athletic thing you've ever accomplished?
Probably this past October, I ran just under a 3-hour marathon, which was probably the hardest thing I've ever done.
Yeah, that's impressive. I figured you might say something after your college football because I know you really got into some running and competition stuff like that. That's very impressive, under 3. Yeah. So kudos to you.
Yeah, took a long time to get there.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what we want to talk about. We're going to talk about fitness and really taking care of yourself, and we're going to incorporate that, obviously, into the Christian worldview. So glad to have Daniel on here with us. I'm going to lead off with this question. It might sort of kickstart everything and make it a little bit easier, but what got you interested in physical fitness and personal health?
Yeah. I think as we, kind of just previously mentioned, grew up playing sports and everything. In high school, probably first started working out. I wasn't ever, anything crazy, talented as far as, athletics or anything like that. So started to realize that the weight room and the training aspect would give me a little bit more of an edge on the athletic field, and honestly probably started enjoying the training aspect of it just as much as the competitive aspect. So kind of fell in love with that, and just had a lot of curiosity about the human body and how it operated and all the internal parts and everything. Studied exercise science in undergrad, with that curiosity. And then I actually had a pretty big injury my freshman year of college playing football. I tore my ACL, had to undergo an ACL reconstruction and then do about a 9 or 10 month rehab process after that. So that definitely, I think, solidified, all that, that curiosity that I had, I guess. And that's kind of what made me want to pursue the career that I'm in now. So kind of a cascade of a lot of different things.
You mean it wasn't all that great high school coaching that I gave you all those years?
That was definitely part of it. Yeah.
Well, we don't have to lie. This is a Christian podcast, so we'll leave all that off there. Hey, speaking
that was
of
definitely a memorable year of high school basketball.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and how inept I was at helping. So yeah, I'll take full blame for that one. We're talking about the Christian worldview here, and I want to follow that up with this because this entire time, obviously, you're a believer and you're getting into exercise science and the physical aspect of things, interested in it. Does the Bible support the idea of taking care of our bodies?
Yeah, I definitely think it does. I think one thing to be clear on before we start that conversation, though, and it's kind of something that we were talking about before we even started the podcast. You're not really going to find the word exercise anywhere in the Bible, I think, at least in the context that we, define that word today.
Right.
Even when you think about the concept of exercise and how, it's incorporated into our culture now, it's kind of this thing that we've had to manufacture just because, of the sedentary and the very convenient lives that we live now. Hundreds and thousands of years ago, it wasn't even a concept because people were out hunting for their food. They were gathering, they're constantly on their feet moving. So, just to set that off, you're not really going to find the word exercise in the Bible. But what I do think, as far as, I guess, to answer your question, does the Bible support taking care of our physical bodies? I absolutely, I do think so. Maybe not in the context of, our physical fitness. I think it probably talks a lot more about, our sexual purity. I know one very common Bible verse that is quoted is, our bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit.
Right.
And, I don't want to take that verse out of context, because that is speaking more to our sexual purity. But I do think that, the Bible is very clear that there is, a direct correlation to how we feed our bodies, how we treat our bodies, and how that aligns with, how we were created as individuals in the image of God.
Yeah, that's a good point. I want to follow that up with this one. In a lot of what you said, does the physical aspect of things, do you think that also can affect or play a role into our spiritual lives?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure if there is a direct linear correlation. But, I think if we are apathetic or idle as, in our physical bodies, then that's definitely going to have spiritual repercussions as well. I don't think that is always going to be the case. But I definitely think that, not having good habits, not having, good discipline with our physical bodies, there's going to be a spiritual element, that's going to be maybe a little bit untapped if we're not as disciplined in those areas.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. Why do you think most people, I guess in the modern day, I mean, we could look at that historically in different reasons, as you mentioned, lifestyles and things like that, but let's just keep it in the modern context here. Why do you think most people, and I say most, and the data backs that up, that's just not hyperbole here, are in poor physical condition? And maybe even a follow-up to that, like particularly in our Appalachian region?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it goes back to, something that I mentioned earlier. I think that just the culture that we live in has just been so catered to convenience and, basically us not having to do a whole lot of anything for ourselves anymore.
Yeah.
We don't have to kill our food anymore and go out and hunt it. We really don't even have to leave our house for our own groceries anymore. So I think just that convenience aspect definitely plays, probably, I would say, one of the biggest roles.
Yeah, I heard one gentleman recently, I thought this is an interesting point. He said that smoking, or sitting, is the new smoking.
Yeah,
I thought it was a pretty interesting way of looking at it, because I thought that's very true. Like you mentioned, the sedentary lifestyle.
Yeah.
has bled into some really poor habits. And I mean, you made an very interesting point. We don't even leave our house for groceries
Yeah.
anymore. You swap a few buttons, punch, click, and here you go. Congratulations. Like somebody's at your house with, bags full of it ready to go.
Exactly.
There are certainly going to be people that might push back on this, and I'm sure you've probably heard this before in your own line of work, but how would you respond for people that say, well, focusing on fitness is just vain and worldly? Like, what would you say to them?
Yeah. I would say to those people that you probably don't have the right perspective of fitness. I think unfortunately, in a lot of different arenas, not just fitness, our culture has, you know, really placed an emphasis on the outward appearance and, the vanity of how we look, how we present ourselves, the way that we are portraying ourselves to the outside world. And I think that fitness can definitely fall into that category too of, basically only exercising or working out just to improve the outward appearance and the cosmetics of your body. If that's the focus of, your entire exercise goals, then I would say that you're completely missing the point.
Yeah.
I think that we need to try to realign our priorities, first and foremost, just to have our general health, but also just to be able to perform in our everyday tasks. I think placing those two things above, the very vain pursuit of just trying to improve your body to impress other people, or, look good to the outside world, obviously that is a byproduct of exercise. And, I don't think that I don't want to put myself in a position to say whether or not that's right or wrong. I don't think that there's anything necessarily wrong with, wanting to look good in the way that you present yourself to others, but it can't be the sole reason why you're pursuing a healthier and a fitter lifestyle, just because I feel like that's a very superficial goal to have.
Yeah. We're busy. 2025, here we are. It's hard to even believe that, but people are on the move constantly in their mind, I think. One task to another task, as my dad would say, too many irons in the fire, right?
Yeah.
When that happens, and I was talking to you a little bit about this before we even got on the air, I can easily see why people neglect the physical aspect. You start focusing on things that you think are actual priorities, and the next thing you know, you turn around and 20, 30, 40 pounds later, high cholesterol, pre-diabetic, you're getting bad reports from the doctor, you're feeling terrible, you've gotten into some awful habits. What advice would you have for Christians to help prioritize their health and make time for exercise and cleaner eating in this super high-paced, very busy world we live in?
Yeah, I think that you hit the highest point, is that you have to make time. I think the fact of the matter is that, our lives can get filled up with all these different tasks. And, if you don't prioritize it, then it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
I know for me, if I don't prioritize it, at the beginning of my day, before all the busyness and all the hustle and bustle starts, then it's going to be, I'm going to be able to come up with a multitude of excuses at the end of the day as to why I don't have time, or, why I don't have the energy, or whatever it is, to not get my exercise in. So I think just taking a very honest audit of your life, and, if this is something that, you do want to try to make a priority, then you need to honor that, and you need to try to get that in, either, schedule, block out a certain time for it, or, I think it's best to try to get it in as early in the day as you can, so that you've got it knocked out of the way. And then, the rest of your daily life can follow after that, and you don't have to worry about squeezing it in somewhere else. So I really think it comes down to what you said, just making it a priority and making the time, rather than, putting it on the back burner and trying to find time later in the day.
Can it become an idol to people?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, as far as, if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, if you're doing it just to improve, the physical appearance of your body, or, just the vanity aspect of it, I certainly think it can become an idol, because you put it on this pedestal, and, you're losing the real purpose behind it. I think that there's probably a lot of people out there who, they may even exercise too much. And I would probably even, place myself in that category a little bit of, there's times when I probably place exercise or, some type of training over something else that I should probably be doing. So I definitely think in our spiritual lives, if you're prioritizing your physical fitness over your spiritual well-being and your relationship with God, then it certainly is an idol.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's shift gears for a second. We've talked about fitness a lot in the sense of, bodily exercise and things. Let's talk about nutrition for a second. It's just as much as part of it. As I was saying, you can't outwork your diet. You've heard that 1,000 times. And obviously there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, you can't do one without the other. How much does nutrition play a role in honoring God with our bodies and being able to say, hey, I am practicing self-control through the Holy Spirit here to abstain from things that I know I don't need to be participating in?
Yeah, I think it plays a huge role. And I think, you have to look at the place that food, even, in our own culture has now. And how much of an indulgence that can be without people even realizing it.
Yeah.
I think that's the sad reality of it is, it's so deeply ingrained into our culture that, even as Christians, it's easy to overlook that and say, man, this is something that I'm indulging in too much, and I'm letting my flesh, roll my actions. And it's something that, I'm seeking too much. So I think that there is a lot to be said. I know that the Bible talks about fasting a lot. And, it's even something that obviously Jesus did, not necessarily for the health benefits of it,
right,
but to become closer, in his spiritual walk with his own Father. I think there's something to be said about abstaining from, the desires that our flesh has, and I think that hunger and food drive is definitely one of those. So I think incorporating the practice of abstaining from that, especially in our culture, can definitely be something, that can, not only benefit your health, but also, help get you a little bit, spiritually more connected.
Yeah. The Bible says that no man liveth unto himself. We have families, and, I've got, me, my wife, 2 kids, of course, you and your wife, and congratulations. We'll let the cat out of the bag.
Yep.
You've got one on the way, so we're excited about that. So congratulations, my man.
Appreciate it.
How would you explain or maybe counsel families to incorporate fitness and nutrition to their daily routine?
Yeah. Obviously this is uncharted territory for myself. So, I'm not speaking from a whole lot of experience. But I think if it's something that, especially the parents are, embarking on their journey for the first time, definitely try to find ways that you can incorporate that as a family, rather than, if you don't want to just commit to it individually, or if you don't have the time to, to leave your wife or your husband, with the kid, find ways that you can get out and be a little bit more active, at any point in the day. Go for family walks, make family meals at home rather than, going through fast food or going through the drive-through. So I think just making it a point to do those things together, can really help, you kind of go on that journey. I think go on that journey together, and also, especially from the kid standpoint, that's gonna help them, and show them what the priorities of the family are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head there. Doing things together that aren't necessarily, getting in the gym, lifting weights and all that kind of stuff. And again, that's perfectly fine if that's your routine. But like you said, go on a walk, get out to the playground, camping, fishing, whatever. Like, I enjoy playing golf. Like, there are things that you can do collectively as a family that aren't necessarily, 100 miles an hour, but they're enjoyable. And I think that's the biggest aspect of it. Like, you need to make time to enjoy it as well, because like anything, if you despise it, you're not going to be a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I think you're right there in the fact that if you're going to incorporate it as a family, do it for enjoyment. I think that's the biggest aspect to kind of pass along there. Here's another one for us. We've developed a lot of disciplines in our faith, Bible reading time, prayer. You can go down the line on a lot of those, and everybody's got their own routines and stuff like that. How can Christians develop discipline and fitness in the same way they do with faith disciplines?
I think the biggest thing with that is just consistency. I think, in the same way that, for a lot of people, it's really hard first thing in the morning to wake up and to open up the Bible, just the act of doing that and getting in the Word each and every day. I would argue that that's the hardest part of either of those journeys, is just the consistency that's involved with that. Because it's easy to do it, here and there, or, a couple days a week. But I really feel like the biggest transformation comes when, in either of those arenas, when you're able to be consistent with those on a daily basis.
How do you help people that get discouraged about progress? Like you said, consistency. I heard a gentleman recently say that, in 365 days in a year, he might work out about 200. And he said, I guarantee you in those 200 workouts, 100 of them are going to be not so great.
Yeah.
And he was talking about, like, I may only get 50 push-ups in. I may only run a little bit. I may only do certain things. Like, how do you help people that get a little discouraged?
Yeah, I think that's where the discipline comes in too, because I think the motivation is going to be very temporary. You might get all fired up, whether that be, for your physical health or your spiritual health. You might get fired up for a couple of days, but eventually that flame's gonna fan out eventually, and then you're gonna have that discipline to kick in and keep you going. So I think just setting the expectation that, more times than not, you're not going to want to do it. Even for somebody, like me, who would, I would consider myself, a fitness person, quote unquote. It's something that I do enjoy a lot. But still, a lot of the times when I'm, just getting into it, at the beginning of the day, I don't want to do it at all. But there's never been a time that I have exercised or done something active, or, spiritually speaking, read my Bible, prayed. There's never been one of those times where I've done it and I've regretted it after.
Yeah.
So I think just coming at it from the understanding of, like I said, more times than not, you're probably not going to want to do it. But you have to understand that, if it's something that you want to reap the benefits of, then you're going to have to incorporate some type of consistency with. I also think that a lot of people, I heard this quote. I don't know who to credit for it, but it said that we overestimate what we can do in a couple weeks or a couple months, and we underestimate what we can do in a couple years.
Yeah.
And that consistency can really, really compound over time. It's a lot easier to start saving for your retirement when you're 30 years old versus 60 years old.
Yeah.
So, I think, when you can get those habits in place, over the course of a year's time, just like your friend that you were speaking of, 200 out of 365 days, like that's pretty dang good.
Yeah.
And that's going to add up over the course of the year.
Yeah, that's a good point. Are there any scriptures that you ever use for, and not out of context, but just like to keep in the forefront of your mind, not necessarily like you're putting them on the wall somewhere or tattooing them on your arm, but some things that you remind yourself of often? You're like, hey, got to keep persevering, got to keep moving forward, got to keep some things in the front of my mind, as I said.
Yeah, I don't think, no specific scriptures. I think one that I do think about often, though, that pertains to this conversation, I actually have it written down here. But 2 Corinthians 4:16, and this might actually come as this is kind of a, I guess kind of goes against what we're talking about. But it says, though outwardly we're wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. And I think on this journey, I think coming to the realization that, yes, this is something that is really good for our physical bodies. It can be really good for us spiritually as well. But at the end of the day, gravity is going to win. And, our bodies are going to break down, unfortunately. But I think the beautiful thing about it is, at the end of your life, just like the scripture says, although we're breaking down and wasting away, inwardly we're becoming wiser. We're becoming closer to God. We're becoming spiritually refined. So I think, coming at it from that perspective, I think it really helps me, just to realize that, this physical pursuit is going to come to an end one day.
Yeah.
But, it helps me keep my perspective on what truly matters. And I think that there's a lot of beauty in that.
Yeah. One for me, that's really good. One for me that, and it's extremely cliche, but over the last probably year and a half, I've sort of thought about it from a different angle. Famously Joshua said, "As for me and my house, we'll serve the Lord." Mm-hmm. And we love that verse, and I do too. And I think there's a lot of motivation and encouragement behind that, and rightfully so. But I guess probably over, the last 18 months or more, I've had to think about that in a different context of the priority of me first and then my house. Mm-hmm. And the reason I bring that up is it's hard for me to say to my son or daughter, follow dad, when dad has no discipline. Mm. It's hard for me to lead my wife spiritually when her husband has no discipline. It's hard for me to look at my congregation and say, I'm here to shepherd you, when the under-shepherd doesn't take very good care of himself and isn't practicing self-control. And I think about that verse a lot in context, and I think, I got to take care of myself and get some priorities in line before I start looking at other people and say, follow me as well, and I'm going to help you, as I'm called to do as husband, dad, pastor, which I am. And so that would be one I would encourage, particularly men, to think about as you lead your families, whatever role you might have in your church, whatever capacity that might be. As I shared at a conference last week, it's hard for people to follow somebody that is not practicing fruits of the Spirit, namely self-control in their own life. So that would be one I would encourage people to look at. Here's another good question as we kind of wind it down a little bit. Any way that churches, like as a larger body, can encourage members to practice healthier lifestyles?
Yeah, I feel like you just hit one of the biggest ones, which is leading by example. I think that, people in the leadership position in a church that's something that they should embody, in my opinion.
Right.
I'm not saying that they have to, be jacked and be able to bench press 315 pounds.
Which I cannot do, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. But, I definitely think that is, that's an area where they should lead their congregation well. And, just embody that in their own daily lives. I haven't seen, and you'll be able to give your input on this if you've seen other examples, but I haven't seen any specific examples, where, a church group has tried to, push, any type of, health or fitness or anything like that, from the perspective of the congregation. I think that having community is really important in any type of, physical fitness pursuit, as it is in church. So I think if you can find people in your congregation that, are in a similar situation as you or have similar goals as you, enjoy the same types of activities, man, I think that is a perfect opportunity to link up with those people. I've always heard you learn a lot more about a person when you're side by side than when you're face to face. So if you're on a journey together, especially with people in the church, with it being a physical pursuit, I think that would be a great opportunity to take advantage of. But as far as churches taking any type of initiative, I haven't seen that. But, it might be something to think about.
Yeah, I was thinking about that as you mentioned, like if I had any examples, and some came to my mind. Again, this is not a one size fits all, and a lot of this has to do with facilities and things like that. So please keep that in mind, what I'm about to say. But some have fascinated me, and I think all done for the right reasons. So everything I'm going to mention here is not, I don't think it's out of line. I don't think it's improper. It's not idolatrous or anything like that. But I've seen plenty of churches that do walking and running groups. They'll meet once or twice a week and kind of open it up to anybody that wants to be a part of that. I've seen congregations that have gymnasiums. They'll have basketball or maybe some pickleball or volleyball for their members throughout the week. That's not going to interfere with services or anything like that. Again, that's facility. You got to think about that, what they can and can't do. So I have seen that before. Obviously, some churches involve themselves in certain sports leagues. I think about Upward. It's a pretty popular thing nowadays, and that comes in different capacities, soccer, basketball, different things like that, mainly for kids. But I've also seen just, churches planning events for people to get together and get out and be active and things like that, again, doesn't interfere with the normal rhythms of services and prayer time and worship and stuff. So I think it all boils back to what you said. You have to be intentional about it. If it's a priority, you'll make do. And again, facilities matter, so please understand that. I'm not telling you go out and build a gymnasium anytime tomorrow if you don't have the funds to do that. I will say one that I found interesting as I was looking over this, over the last few months has been an interest to me. Churches that have the capacity, I have actually seen good faithful church. This is not, I don't want to blow smoke here about unfaithful churches, but legitimately faithful churches that built small exercise gyms on their property and opened them up for their members for free. No charge, just take care of the facility, come in, exercise, take care of your body, just as much as they would open up the sanctuary for times of prayer, counsel, study, all that. If they had a library, they also opened up a gym, a small gym, that they had bought equipment for. I thought that was fascinating. I thought that was interesting, and I actually didn't think it was a terrible idea, to be frank. Again, all of that conducive on, do you have the means? You don't want to get yourself in major debt over stuff like that for no reason. But I thought that was interesting to throw that out there. So if that's something your church is capable of, I don't necessarily think that's a terrible idea. But again, just put the guardrails up and make sure you do it well. But a couple more here. One piece of advice that you give to a Christian struggling with fitness or maybe eating habits?
Yeah, I think it would probably be, the same advice that, I would give to anybody, which would be just start with the lowest hanging fruit. Something that you and I talked about, before we got on air. But, I think just starting with the simplest ways that you can in your everyday life, I think that a big misconception is that you have to start this, super intense, specific workout regimen, that has to be very detailed. And, I think when you're just starting out, it doesn't have to be that way, so I think cut out, soda or whatever liquid calories that you're consuming. I think cut out, certain condiments that are just very calorically dense. Just focus on moving your body more throughout the day. Take the stairs, park in the furthest parking spot that you can, so that you have to get more steps in. Go for a little walk after lunch. Go out and walk with your family. So I think just very simple steps like that can be really helpful. And can yield a lot of really good results, especially for someone, just getting into it. And I think that once you break past that barrier, then, you can get a little bit more specific in, the ways that you're eating and the ways that you're training. But I think when you're just starting out, it's very important just to get the low hanging fruit. And then, just see how much progress that you make off of that.
Yeah, those are all really good pieces of advice. Where can our listeners maybe find out more information and content from you? I know you use social media from time to time, but you're also obviously a physical therapist and you do some coaching on the side. How can people get in touch with you for either of those?
Yeah. So I'm probably the most active on my Instagram page, which you can go follow at dr.dan.dpt on Instagram. That's probably where I'm most active. And then, if you have any other specific questions, you can shoot me an email that I might have you put that in the show notes.
Yeah, we can do that.
Like that. Okay, perfect. So if you have any specific questions, feel free to email me. And then I work at Watauga Orthopedics here in Kingsport. So if you ever have any orthopedic or rehab needs, then you can head on over and see me for any of those.
And you'll be on the cover of Muscle and Fitness Win? No, I'm kidding. No, that edition's not coming out yet because they don't have a Christian version, so Daniel's not going to be on that. Dan, I appreciate you being on, man. Thank you so much. Congratulations on all the things in your life right now. Really cool to see all that panning out for you. Good to see you back and healthy again. I know you had a scare there with that ACL injury a couple years ago. So thank you for coming on the Deeply Rooted podcast, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it.
All right, folks, that's it for us. Thank you guys for listening. Don't forget, make sure you hit that subscribe and like. Share that with other people. Apple Podcast, YouTube channel. Head on over to our website, deeplyrootedconference.org. All the fun things there. And so you can get in contact with us if you'd like at drigw18@gmail.com. Again, we'll put Daniel's email there in the show notes for you. And so until next time, we love you guys. Hope you have a great week in Jesus.